Welcome to this December 23rd special coffee and lunch with yours truly, Dragon. Thank you for the donation. No, I'm not gonna take salad. I'm gonna take some salad later. Thank you. Okay. Well, you have some. You had some already, right? Actually, maybe I'll try some salad with it. Hold on. Maybe I'm gonna.
But the sausage is vegan.
Sausage is vegan. Let's have a taste. Gotta thank the donation. Those who donated the truckers, the farmers, the firefighters, plumbers, electricians, welders, and the truckers on the road, the bakers, the nurses finishing their 12-hour shift, Gotta thank them, send some salutation to the bus drivers, the electricians, the plumbers, the construction workers. Gonna have a taste. So let's have a little bit of taste here, see how it is. That's where they're gonna get it. Oh yeah, it is vegan, eh? Yeah, it's vegetarian vegan. Very good though. So thank you for this lunch, the donation, and increases my food security because right now my only stress is basically economic, financial, and I just went to did laundry at the laundromat. I wish I could buy my anonymous friend and for myself also a washer and a dryer because I got to take some responsibility about 2/3, 66% that it is my fault for having damaged it. So yeah, this is a vegan sausage, vegan vegetarian. The distinction between them I'm not really sure, but yeah, it is meatless, but it tastes really good. And of course, it has a little bit of rice in it, so with some broccoli, so that's always good to go. Because I gotta salute the firefighters, the bakers, the nurses. Special lunch, Imperial lunch, which yours truly, Dragon. And I guess we're gonna go. Maybe later we're gonna have a little bit of salad. I'm just gonna have a taste now, and of course, gotta do a meditation about the civilization, the North American collective, as we're gonna go freestyle rock and rolling. Geopolitics freestyle rock and rolling for food security. Food security is a primary element of our civilizational complex, especially due to the fact that food security is a growing pressure crisis in Canada since food bank use has increased since 2019. So we have the statistics and the numbers, of course, that they're quite alarming because the food security is an increasing problem in the past, let's say, 6 years. And of course, 2019 is the year when yours truly, and I have proof for it, I gotta say, is when yours truly I have predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration in the world. So back in 2019, basically, I predicted that there's gonna be an international conflagration across the world. So it's always important for me to pinpoint at that point in time. As a philosopher, is all my work, which is not only artistic and athletic and philosophical, but also geopolitical in nature. Because I am not just an artist and athlete, double AA artist, athlete, and philosopher, androgynous pansexual who lives with Asperger's, the neurological mental divergent condition known as Asperger's, but of course also a independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, thinker, philosopher, and strategist. I develop strategies mostly for the North American collective, and that is my special interest, of course, Aspies. People like myself who are on the spectrum of autism, Asperger's, and HFA is the same thing. We have special interests, and just in those special interests, we can excel and be above average and really be savants in many ways in those special areas, fields of specialization. So I'm myself an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, strategist, and philosopher. And as I'm eating this lunch, I gotta thank the donations because I'm not sure the provenance, the origin of it. The broccoli, we have broccoli growing in Canada. We see a little bit of garlic and a little bit of rice. So basically, it could be North American. And I always putting up for the 10, the 50, and the 3, always for the 63 as the North American collective. We fundamentally constitute an emergent civilizational complex. And food security is super important in our collective. And if I meditate, do a little bit of meditation as a Canadian, Quebecer, North American who was born in the United States 3 times post 1776. Once was born as a woman, twice lived as a man, served in the same United States Armed Forces, 156 years apart. So I can channel George Patton's poem, 3 glass darkly, the power of 7, drop down, give me some push ups for world peace as well. But nonetheless, fundamentally, my reincarnations aside, I have to do a meditation on the 44-day government shutdown, which of course precluded and affected about 40 45 million citizens, between 40 and 45 million citizens who respectively were supported by the government in what's called the EBT, electronic benefits transfer, which is basically a food security program for my brothers and sisters in the 50 states. And here in Canada, with growing food insecurity, we have to do a meditation, of course, of the importance of food and food security for all the things that we do. For example, it's going to enable me to continue to clean my room for the holidays. I'm doing laundry. I'm actually drying because I what broke is the washer, right? The washer broke, so I had to go do some laundry at the laundromat. It cost me $4 Canadian, but I'm challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match on the Canadian-U.S. border, and of course, anybody else I'm willing to get in the ring with. I guess I'm 93.7 kilos, so if I categorize for heavyweights, who's the champion, I'm willing to get it going. Maybe mid-February, let's do the winter in the end of winter or early spring. March 19th. I'm definitely, I wouldn't mind getting in the ring with anybody really, as long as there's sportsmanship, because I don't like violence. I'm somebody person who doesn't like violence, and I live a hyper vigilant life, but I don't like violence. But that's why you have to channel aggression and violence. There's the sportsmanship like protocols, and of course in the sports, in the fitness arenas, and the boxing and the martial arts and the gridiron and the hockey, when you drop those gloves, you got to get that going, and you get those left and right like a jab, like a little boxing matches, which we have sometimes in the NHL. And go Habs go, give some charity please. NFL, NHL, MLB, and NBA. I was hoping to see more charity for the holidays because it's the 23rd, and I feel much better now. I guess with gratitude, I was a bit moody, I was still craving a massage therapy session, and if you're 18 and plus, means that if you do the calculation, you have to be born before December 23rd. You have to be born on before December 22nd if it's in the EST time zone. 2007, so I'm going to card you. But if you want to play that and or play Dual Legions, Legion support the dream, the dancing goddess in the dragon kingdom, which is fundamentally my dream for the North American collective to fuse Canada and the United States into the Imperial protocols, and of course to implement my Trinity or theories, the Holy Trinity, CIT citizen integration theory, DRT debt refusion theory, and DFT democratic fusion theory, of course, to be appellated in all the domains where we have now the plurality of course, all the environmental aspects and the social cultural aspects, which we have to integrate in a plateau of a mass public-private partnership. Basically, fundamentally, my dream is a call for a mass public-private partnership across the North American collective, whence we are now to be implemented and integrated and socialized in this manner that these protocols have to be implemented for the safeguarding of the North American civilization and collective, primarily, fundamentally. So I'm going to briefly discuss it. Well, we constitute a North American civilizational collective. So, Canada, United States, of course, we constitute a civilizational collective that is, of course, a distinct civilizational, emergent civilizational collective. Quebec, Canada, United States. And here in Quebec, we made, of course, the great linguistic compromise. You can see the fleur de lis there with the maple leaf and the stars and the stripes, as we're going to fuse into the collective of the 63. Again, thank you for the food. This is really good. Way better than I was expecting. So I got good nutrition. And this food will enable me to continue doing my drying because it's going to take at least 2 hours, for the drying here in my room of St. Temple. At least 2 hours, I estimate. Minimum 2 hours. That's my estimation. Because I had some big loads, So I had a big load. I just had one machine, but I used the bigger machine. So because there's four types of machines: smaller, medium, large, and extra large. So I used the large one for the big load. So that was something which I gotta say fundamentally that I really enjoyed, and I really am enjoying this meal. So thank you for the cooks. You meditate on the food supply if you are to be strategic as the North American collective, and of course, as I'm calling all to fund the North American Collective Workers' Party is a universal revolutionary centrist party, of course. It is the fundamentals that food security we can relegate if basically we can be self-sufficient. in Quebec, Canada, United States, is food security. Certain things we cannot grow, of course, like bananas and oranges here in North America, in Quebec, Canada, United States, but we can certainly grow garlic and tomatoes and potatoes. We have the best potatoes here in Quebec, and we have lots of cheeses. I always discuss them. The Quebec cheeses, the best, more than 700 varieties of cheese here in Quebec. So we got to get that rock and rolling, and of course we have maple syrup. Maple syrup comes rock and rolling, and I got to give a shout out for the workers of the Hydro Quebec. All the electricity now, the ones you're utilizing, is clean, zero pollution, zero emission energy. That you can think that, just to meditate on how it was built over the decades, and meditate a bit that life was hard, in the 1700s, 1800s, and I lived as a woman here between 1688 and 1735. I was the daughter of a Fidgerois, when Louis, who brought them over as a Fidgerois here to colonize New France. Back then it wasn't Quebec, it was New France. Just going to mix it up a little bit. And I do believe in reincarnations. Like I stated a priori before, that I was born in the United States several times, post 1776, once as a woman, twice as a man. And since ancient Egypt, from the pyramids till today, as a priestess, as a farmer, as a butcher, as a builder, as a part of the Roman legions, soldier, part of the Roman legions, and up to today, sometimes I was born a man, a woman, a woman, a man, a woman, a man, man, a woman, woman, man, man, a woman, woman, man. That you get that 50-50 now, being that I'm androgynous, but if you don't believe in reincarnations, that's fine. But for me, the rock and roll is always God bless the coming of our empire, and Goddess kiss. God bless, Goddess kiss. I do goddess it, on the table, spiritual mystic table. You gotta get that rock and roll with the goddess. I gotta say God bless Canada, Goddess kiss Canada, Goddess bless or Goddess kiss both the USA and Canada. I gotta say that goddess. I think that's what we need sometimes, a little bit of our rock and roll with the goddess. Sometimes, we got the irrational, emotional, subconscious elements which are prevalent. Sometimes we're not fully aware of them, myself included, where we have certain interactions with certain people who look different than us, or who are different than us. We always try to build those bridges. Certainly myself, as a member of the neurodivergent community of Aspies, it has been a tough journey. It took me years and years and years to accept it. Since about 2015, 2016, I've been told by several individuals I've experienced in the healthcare system, and have advised me and told me, you have Asperger's, you're on the spectrum of autism, because HFA, high functioning autism, and Asperger's, they merge together. So definitely, it took me about 7 years, 2015, 2016, about late 2022, early 2023, like January, February 2023, when I finally accepted that I do have Asperger's, and that I have to manage these characteristics. I don't use the word symptoms, but sometimes it is what I call double DD. It's categorized as a disability and a disorder, but in parentheses we also have slash, so we put that into parentheses in the parameters of what Asperger's is: a neurological mental divergent condition, not a disease, but in certain cases, yes, it is a disability. Although myself personally, I do not use the words symptoms, because they're more characteristics and traits, right? But parallel to the double DD, the disorder and disability, we have the double SS, and they basically complement each other. The special skills, when we can be very, very good at those things which when we are our special interests, basically, which are also known as obsessive interests. So that's where my abilities as an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, philosopher, and strategist come into play, because my special interest, my holy trinity, is sports, fitness, dancing is my favorite sport, and rock and roll and geopolitics. So for hours and hours and hours a day, I'm engaged in either working out, training, exercising, and looking at different sports. And I wish I could, if I would be a millionaire, I wish I would support more women's sports, and I wish I would have get the tickets for Victoire here, the professional women's hockey league. They're as good as the men, and I would have go to support them every time. But my only stress now is financial. But besides that, of course, we have the sports, which my 49ers won yesterday. I guess it was 25 versus 44, 25 versus 44, basically making a reference to Purdy, the age. Age is just a number. Brady won his last Super Bowl. He was almost 45, I believe. Said he's too old when he was 40. And he still won two Super Bowls, one with the Patriots versus the Rams. One of my favorites. Not People don't like it that much because it was the lowest ever scoring Super Bowl. And one of my favorite Super Bowls is the Harbaugh Bowl, aka Blackout Bowl. And before I forget, I want to mention that yours truly, I will to build four, and I salute the construction workers. The four mass buildings which I will to build on the Canadian-U.S. border is the biggest ever Super Bowl sports arena ever built. The Imperial People's Coliseum to be 11 times bigger than the Harbor Bowl, where the well, actually several Super Bowls were bought, battled, fought, and played out. It was Harbor Bowl, Blackout Bowl, but that. So Super Bowl 47 has several nicknames. That's one of my top five favorites. Super Bowl 47 is also known as the Blackout Bowl, as the Harbor Bowl, and of course those Super Bowls were played, fought, battled out in that arena where is now called Caesar Superdome. And Caesar Superdome is now, of course, known as, before it was known as Caesar Superdome as it is today, it was known as the Mercedes Benz Dome, and before that, it was the Louisiana Superdome, and before that, basically, it changed name several times, just like I changed name, but officially, my name change had to acquire some financing to get it officially changed. Adrian H Dragon became Adrian on a Dragon. Nobody's born a dragon is the motto of the Dragon Army. Drop down, give me some push-ups, say the gratitude for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, electricians, construction workers, the cooks, flipping some hamburgers, some cheeseburgers, some lettuce, making some of that good. Well, some put lettuce or not. Romaine lettuce is the favorite food for some, I guess. Number one, and then the rest, right? Some people have romaine lettuce number one, and then bread and whatever, potatoes, and for some, romaine lettuce is the main course and the main dish, depending. So that is, of course, the relation where we have now to be relative. Now, I will to build out of the Imperium the biggest ever Super Bowl, but the biggest ever sports arena, sports complex, sports arena ever built. To be on the Canadian-U.S. border, of course, to be built 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome, before it was known as the Louisiana Superdome, and of course, that is the biggest ever super sports complex where Super Bowls can be played by far in the future on the Canadian-U.S. border. And the inauguration event will be Dragon versus Trump, and of course to build that mega structure, which was going to be 11 times, of course, bigger than whatever existing sports arena Coliseum was built, and of course to get it on the go now, to get it on the left and the right, and to manifest, of course, the incentives where we are now, to build, of course, also the Forgotten Goddess Temple. I will to build the Forgotten Goddess Temple, and of course that temple to be built 11 times bigger than the current building that is Forgotten Goddess Temple. I will to build 11 times with the help of the construction workers and all willingly loving pledge your allegiance, our family, to lay the foundations for the coming of our fusion Imperial Republic of the 63 Canada United States to be formed and confluential into the Imperial Republic. I'm going to lay the foundations of trillions of kisses and trillions of marching steps, lots of rock and roll, and that's what we got, of course, to get doing on that appellation and to get on the levels of course, the playing field where we're going to build the Forgotten Goddess Temple, which is going to be, of course, 11 times bigger than the St. Joseph's Oratory. St. Joseph's Oratory is a structure in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and the Forgotten Goddess GODDSS Temple, which I laid the foundations for trillions of kisses. I'm ready to build some bricks because I'm building a new table here. I guess I died several times, of course, several times during COVID, as I died here in this underground room of St. Temple. I guess I'm being reborn, of course, and I guess I will save myself in order to save some, especially my Independent Citizens Security Initiative, my IC Independent Citizen Security Initiative, my ICSI Independent Citizen Security Initiative, which of course I concorded about circa 2016 in relation to the Islamic State terror group when I discovered propaganda here on behalf of the Islamic State, and now we're seeing a resurgence in the past 2.5 months of the Islamic State terror group having their activities increased and attack terrorist attacks being formulated by this Islamic State group, which of course was declared itself a caliphate back in 2014. And end of June, early July 2014, they declared themselves a caliphate. And myself, in circa 2016, I had to do an independence, what I call an independent citizen security intervention, and ICSI, Independent Citizen Security Intervention, and I wrote several protocols formulated thereof as in relation to the binational security of the NORAD, specifically for NORAD, always for the 10, the 50, and the 3, and for Canada, United States. I believe my intervention maybe saved some lives. So I guess that's why I didn't die where I used to live in that moldy place. And I'm here now doing this video with a little bit of lunch and rock and rolling. And always for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the truckers. I'm going to salute that nurse who finishing their 12-hour shift now, because truckers on the road transporting, they're also been, going east, west, or north, south, and the public workers changing the aqueducts and maintaining civilization, because civilization is a privilege. I always got to, of course, mention that aspect, of course, of the civilizational aspect of the building thereof, and the consequence of that myself. I gotta salute Hydro Quebec, for we have now electricity which is clean, zero pollution, and zero emission due to the workers of the past 20th century. And of course 21st century, we're gonna build some more dams, and our hydroelectricity goes all the way to five or six states in the United States, all the way to Manhattan Island. About 20th, 1/5 of the electricity goes, of course, all the way to Manhattan Island. So that's what we're gonna have to get doing with that, and we're gonna get to get that rock rolling to build more dams and become self-sufficient. And it's clean, zero environmental friendly, So that's what we have to do now to get it, of course, on the involvement of the discussion what we have at hand, which basically is not neglecting for me to mention that my will, of course, is to build for the Imperial People's Coliseum on the Canadian-US border, and of course to get the building, of course, of the Forgotten Goddess Temple, and the consequential to build relatively to the Forgotten Goddess Temple, to build also the Rainbow People's Palace for my fellow neurodivergent community, fellow LGBTQ community as well, the Rainbow Nation across nation, and fellow Aspies and autistic people who have live with autism generally, and of course to build the Rainbow People's Palace and the House of the Dragon. The House of the Dragon, Scarlet, Scarlet, Scarlet is that shade of red, crimson. Scarlet is a shade of red and crimson, and to build it here, to have I could have open doors there Monday to Friday. Here is too small where I live now. I can't even have guests. Well, that is something that I will to do, and consequently will to do that, and gotta get it for that, for those workers, the teachers, the bakers, the cooks, those in the fast food joints now, flipping some hamburgers. I'm a great fan, I wouldn't last a day, I guess, in McDonald's or Burger King or Harvey's or, Wendy's, or please give some charity, mayonnaise. I want, since for years and years, if you check my past videos and transcripts, I guess for the message has been pretty, call it a heart, basically, for millionaires to give some charity, because money is to buy, sell. And if I would have been a billionaire, don't be a Grinch. Wall Street, please donate. And please, NFL, National Football League, NHL, National Hockey League, NBA, National Basketball Association, MLB, please donate tickets for the public workers and reduce the cost of the tickets by 44.9%. 44.9%, of course, they have to be relegated to the Dominion to give across the North American collective in these tough economic financial times for many. It's tough economic times, so I'm certainly grateful that I got this lunch. It increased my food security, and it basically contributed to my food security as well. So I can do this video, I can work, I can meditate, I can continue doing my drawing. The drawing is not all about the Wall Street. It's not all about Wall Street. It's not all about the money. Not all. Money is to buy, sell. It serves a function, a purpose. That's why my DRT, the debt refusion theory, of course, fundamentally the DRT, the debt refusion theory, is of course the paradoxically that this DRT, the debt refusion theory, and I gotta mention that about a third of it came from the idea in Christmas holiday 2018. I got a gift from an anonymous acquaintance, and forgets financially at least $1 million, because this theory, which was a third, at least 33.3% out of it, came from this book, which is semi-conspiratorial, but it wasn't all conspiracy. But I don't believe much in conspiracy theories. But it was a book that also had real financial information. So he's discussing the financial systems of ancient Egypt, ancient Babylon, ancient Sumer, ancient China, the British Empire, the Dutch East India Company was discussed a lot, and it focused a lot on the financial crises the Great Recession that lasted between 2007 and 2010. And there it was semi-conspiratorial that it said that was engineered by somebody who worked in Canada and in the US in finance and in banking and in commercial affairs, and supposedly because of the surname. Now, I'm not an expert of the underworld. I'm not an expert of the international criminal syndicates. Some people are more than me. My specialty is geopolitics, but of course, when you study geopolitics, you have to take into consideration international terrorism in the 21st century, post 9/11 more than ever, and the relation with international terrorism and transnational organized crime groups and transnational criminal syndicates, which of course have established themselves more and more in the past decade in Canada. So that a priori, that aforementioned being said, of course, to be confluential about, that it was discussing it was actually blaming much of the financial crises on the engineering of the CDO's collateralized debt obligations and the relation of this person who had moved back to China just before the great financial crisis started with the mortgage crisis in about July 2007. July 2007, September 2007, October, November 2007, lasted around 2010, and there's still reverberations from that crisis today in many aspects of our worldwide global financial system. So basically, it was saying that that surname is linked to triads, to Hong Kong Chinese based underworld criminal syndicates, basically the triads, in other words, right? So he was discussing that. Now, I don't know much about that. It's like I said, I'm not big on conspiracy theories, but the financial discussions that were discussed there certainly were of some of importance and relevance. And paradoxically, that book gave nascence to me writing the DRT theory, the debt refusion theory, which fundamentally we have to implement because it will require mass public-private partnership. And of course, my brother Scorpio Bill Gates of Microsoft and Flock Safety and Palantir and all the institutions and organizations in the public-private partnership manner. Of course, as we're going to relegate that, we're going to implement that is the DRT, the debt refusion theory for the creation of the UE, U dot universal, U dot exchange, U dot UE, the UE, which is going to be fundamentally the imperial dollar. The imperial dollar, and of course, we can transpose it to NATO member countries, not just Canada, United States, but first and foremost, Canada, United States, as we're going to do a great census. We're going to get rid of the border, create a common imperial passport. We're going to formulate a common SSD Legion, security, service, and defense, and we're going to mass finance the rebuilding of the ghettos, aka the inner urban cities. We have to rebuild the inner urban cities, and we're going to mass finance fitness as well, and mass finance tourism. The Imperial Tourism Ministry four times every year. 4 times 4 is going to be 16. We're going to get relegation, of course, to get it on the go, and we're going to mass finance citizens fitness and citizens tourism. So every season, spring, summer, equinox, and of course the summer, the spring, the equinox of the spring, the equinox of the summer, the equinox of the so but basically it's 4 seasons across Canada, United States: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. So once you're 16 and over, everybody, regardless of all other status, is going to be accorded 4 nights with travel, lodging, and expenses covered. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or just two meals a day, or it could be breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and transportation via plane, via bus, and via trains. And we're gonna relegate, and this is gonna be for the youth, especially, to concord a strong imperial esprit de corps and a strong joy and a rebirth and a regeneration as a mass public-private partnership. Because when I got out of my depression was due to traveling coast to coast. When I traveled coast to coast back in 2017, I always mention that event because it really changed my life. I was depressed, suicidal, right here, and traveling got me great good. And of course, having that I traveled so much, basically coast to coast, and I still have the tickets, by the way, auctioning them for a man. And I went with my anonymous friend, of course, by the truck, by the bus, 3.5 days by bus. Of course, we went, of course, to British Columbia, Vancouver, first in 2017 in August, and then in September we went, of course, by train, 25 hours and 44 minutes from Montreal to Halifax. You got the 10 provinces, 3 territories, which were going to be 13 states, just like the original. So 13 plus 50 equals 63. But in 2017, I crossed Canada coast to coast, and that event made me establish a stronger spirit of core with my fellow Canadians and brothers and sisters in the USA. And that's why we're going to concord and formulate the imperial We're going to implement this mass public-private partnership basically to finance citizens to travel across Canada, United States, as we're going to fuse in one, get rid of the border, merge the FBI, RCMP into Imperial Police Service, the IPS, Imperial Police Service, based on my new 911 Total Dragon Army protocols for total security, total service, total defense, and total integration across the plateau for the regeneration, rejuvenation of the North American collective, especially the youth, and to take care of the elderly as well, who are in certain homes. I had some experience in with working with the elderly in the elderly home. I guess I contributed. I guess I did some contribution. I guess I did some contribution. I had made mention that one of the senior citizens didn't have on the chair, didn't have the on the head. The head was like this and holding, and needed a little protective from the head. So I believe that my intervention was necessary, and it certainly did some great good in the terms that the my evaluation is a bit semi-mathematical. I concorded the weight and the pressure. Sometimes Aspies were good in mathematics. I concorded the weight of the head being pulled by the gravity, and I made the assessment that that's a safety and a pain. And the elderly, you want them in their elderly age to be as happy, as joyous, as content, as safe as possible. So after my intervention, that I took note and I advised the other workers. They had placed something on the head which kind of stabilized the head from being held like this all the time. So I guess that's why I always save myself to save others. And I'm not perfect. Sometimes I'm moody. Sometimes I'm moody myself, and just wish I could get a massage therapy session once in a while. But or I can give pro quo, friends with benefits only, but you got to be 18 plus for that, or pledge your allegiance, and it's got the priestess of the goddess, rainbow dragon, 2-in-1, double trouble, Adrian, Hana dragon, androgynous, pansexual, Aspie, artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical, theoretical, analyst, and dinner. So though my only stress now is, of course, financial. Of course, my only stress being financial, I also call on the billionaires to, of course, concord and give some charity. Don't be so selfish. It requires a lot of work, and all this civilization is a privilege now. And I believe my protocols and initiatives for the total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion in the geopolitical world and the sphere, has to be counterbalanced, of course, by my universal revolutionary centrism. And when I say universal revolutionary centrism, is North American centric. So when I make the statement that I'm a universal revolutionary centrist, is tied hand in hand with my trinity of theories for the 21st century, and of course the establishment of the NACWP, the North American Collective Workers Party, aka the Viennese People's Party, the NACWP, North American Collective Workers Party, which I'm calling all to support in any way, shape, capacity. Pledge your allegiance to our family. Don't waste my time. I won't waste yours. Coast to coast, ocean to ocean. We're going to fuse the RCMP and the FBI, formulate, of course, the totally imperial consequential rehabilitation of the criminal population in order to construct those 44 mass city tunnels. In case of a thermonuclear war, we need to build 44 tunnels, and that makes me think of 25 versus 44, Brady versus Rivers, because Rivers is being called, and some people have been questioning, but it seems that his age, due to his age, and being that he's been 5 years out of the arena, that he's still being able to perform. And I guess there's exceptions to the rule. I guess my own changing right here in this room of some temple, although I have a ritual like routine due to my Asperger's, it's sports and fitness, rock and roll, 24/7 rock and roll, sports and fitness, and geopolitics. I consequently can make way for example, helping my anonymous friend if there's any need of doing some action, and action is required, of course, consequently for the philosophy and the theorizing, such as we're going to need to get the DGA, because I notice a lot, at least here in Montreal, and I imagine across North America, how much work there is to be done, because we need in the public to do proper recycling, and putting the recycling in the recycling, and putting the garbage in the garbage, and consequently, vis-a-vis, we have to get the DGA, the Dancing Goddess Army, the Imperial Integrated Dancing, of course, to be of the notation where we have, of course, to put some work. So I'm all about work, but paradoxically, my community is in the 80%. 4 out of 5 Aspies are unemployed, because we sometimes we're more direct, and we can be offensive. Not that we mean to be offensive or direct or abrasive. It's just sometimes we're very straightforward in certain things, and the interactions. It requires some patience and understanding of autism, HFAI, functional autism, Asperger's. So has been certainly a road. And when I mentioned my condition, neurological mental divergent condition known as Asperger's, I also consequently have to mention the books which helped me a lot, Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome, and of course the other book, which is teaching Asperger's students social skills through acting all their worlds the stage. I haven't finished it. By the New Year's, I'm going to have to finish that book consequently. But Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome is definitely a book which has helped me tremendously in all areas to be able to build those bridges with you, the vast majority of the population, the 99%, of which you constitute, of course, the 99%. You are the population of the world, of North America, fundamentally. And we are Aspies. We are a tiny minority of less than 1%, and about half only are officially diagnosed. So just going to go get some coffee, put this, check my laundry. Well, after lunch, we got some coffee. We got some coffee, so that's always what it is good to go, and that's how we're gonna get a little bit of that. And I got something to go with the coffee. Thank you again for the donation. This is, my friend calls it a bread. I call it a special semi bread, semi pastry, half half, 50-50, because it's a bit sweet and you're gonna go good with the coffee. And I put some sugar in the coffee. Usually I do not put sugar, so I gotta be grateful also. This was also donated, so I got the mug auctioning it for me, and it's a special holiday season mug. So it's got a lot of things to be grateful for. So now we're gonna go a little bit into geopolitics with some rock and roll for the firefighters. I guess I can let my main out, auctioning the hat, the underwear, the socks, the pants, and everything that I'm wearing. I'm for $1 million each. Gonna give half 50% to my anonymous friend. You know how it is. Always for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the truckers, the firefighters, and the plumbers. If you wanna commission a bit of rock and roll or geopolitics or sports and fitness, and I created my own sports activity fitness, my own program back in 2019. And you got to leave the baggage at the door. Now we're going to go into coffee and geopolitics. So geopolitics today is in a parallel manner as I have predicted it. So the new table here, as you can see, I have a new table which I acquired by some labor last year, and inviting all to the new table. I'm building atop Mount Royal, my second home there in Mount Royal, where I call all the willingly loving participants to pledge your legions or be a friend with benefits only. Got to be 18 plus for that one. And calling the leaders of the free world and NATO, because my theories protocols are first and foremost for the North American collective, but also for the NATO complex. So that's where we got to get a little bit of that drill. Back in 2019, in October 17 to be precise, in 2019, right here in this room of Sun Temple, I made the first video. It was called Day One of the World War III scenario. So in other words, in October 2019, I had predicted a World War III, an international conflagration, and of course things are moving in that direction and have been moving in that direction ever since, especially since the invasion of Russia, the invasion Russia's invasion of Ukraine, what they call their special military operation, or the war in Ukraine. Again, I'm not on the ground in any of the conflicts with 300 men and women. I'm not on the ground anywhere in any conflicts with 300 men and women to assess and to, of course, be an arbiter and to be sort of a referee and to try to negotiate ceasefires or right at that point in time. My call for the past years, as you can see, you can go back to maybe 3.5 during COVID, 4 years, 3.5 years, 3.5 years plus, more than 3.5 years in the past. And you can see that all my initiatives that I've been calling for have been, of course, a mass public-private partnership to create the consequential covenant and cooperative institutions, the Dancing Goddess Army, aka the Imperial Integrated Dance League, to dance for the environment and for the truckers, the butchers, the workers, the firefighters, the electricians, the plumbers, for the workers, and of course to dance for the environment as well and for pleasure. And the Dragon Army, of course, the DGA, parallel to the Dragon Army, aka the Imperial Integrated SSD Legion, the SSD, the Security Service and Defense Legion, and all my other initiatives and basically theories which I have been calling for their implementation across the North American collective. So that has to be sufficiently understood in all the matters where we are today, in parallel and in consequence to my prediction of a World War III right in this room of St. Temple more than 6 years ago, in October 20 of this year, 2025. It's already been 6 years, and I can't believe that in 2 months in February, March is going to be 6 years since I survived COVID, also here in this room house in Temple. I've been living here for more than 10 years now. I left a very moldy underground place. It was like a tight prison cell. It wasn't really an official prison cell, but I guess I served my time there, and I didn't even have a bathtub there. So that is, of course, something to be understood in all the civilizational complex where we have now to be relegated. That my hope is for the youth, because the motto of the empire, the coming fusion of Canada and the United States into the 63 imperial complex, aka the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, where the children are innocent, right? The youth are innocent, the children are innocent, and where we're going to rebuild our North American collective and rebuild the ghettos, aka the urban cities, the highways. We got to mass rebuild the highways, the infrastructure. Lots of the bridges are in bad shape, bad condition. So we have to invest massively across the North American collective as a mass public-private partnership. Well, that is fundamentally the work to be done here. The Arbeit, Travail, in French. So that that is, of course, where we arrive today at this point in time where my predictions have come to fruition. And again, I do say that if I would have stayed where I used to live, maybe I would have been myself, homeless or maybe dead, or who knows if I wouldn't have moved here. Although I spent some years depressed and suicidal here, but in my community, Aspie community, people with Asperger's, there's a very high suicidal and depression rate. Very high suicidal and depression rate. So I didn't take my life, and I like to see the youth happy and joyous. Whenever I see the youth smiling and going up and down, like jumping around freely. And we're gonna have establish the empire of the free, the brave, the strong, the loving, and the just and the righteous. Not only the strong, the brave, because here we got the true north, strong and free, right? It's not enough, my fellow Canadians, to be strong and free. We gotta have some loving, some understanding, and from the millionaires, please give some charity. I wanted to see more charity being done in the past years, especially during the holidays. I would have liked to distribute candies, and if I would have been a millionaire, I would have started before in November. Would have institutions and organizations and community organizations, and of course with police forces, with armed forces, with veteran organizations. We would have put some youth and some, maybe given some opportunities to homeless to make some money, part employment to those who need it. And if I would have been a millionaire, I would have financed citizens to basically load the trucks and unload the trucks, and we would have bought wholesale, because wholesale you get a better deal when you buy wholesale. Of course, we'd have got candies, we would have got sweets, we would have got sneakers, we got underwear, all lights, and of course candies for the holidays and lights for the Christmas, and would have given them, distributed them to needy people around the empire, around Canada, United States, the North American collective. If I would have been a billionaire, I would have put millions to that, and myself, I would have went to dressed as Santa Claus, and would have had some people dressed as Santa Claus, as reindeers, all sorts of. Would have been a charity project. In other words, it would have been a holiday charity project that I would have mass financed in a creative way, But here I am, financially stressed myself. But the idea, millionaires, do it. That's what money is, to buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell. And here I came. I moved with nothing really here, so most of my specialty is rock and roll songs and geopolitics and rock and roll, and of course got those kisses by the trillions, and that's what it is with that, and that's what we have to get doing with that. And of course it is the arbeit, where we have to put in the projections now, where we are to relegate ourselves in the dynamics, of course, of where we got to be the dynamical aspects, to be representative, of course, of the left and right, and in the middle, as a mass public private partnership is required across the North American collective. So back to geopolitics. However, it is in our interest, geopolitical interest, to also be charitable for the holidays, holiday joy, holiday charity. It is also a part of geopolitical interest if you think about it and meditate a little about it without being too academic, intellectual, or philosophical about it. It is in our interest for the main as being is, and in accordance with a public-private partnership to mass finance holiday joy, for our brothers and sisters who are in need. In need, right? Because as I mentioned aforementioned, food security is a growing concern in Canada. Food bank usage has doubled since 2019, so that is another geopolitical aspect. And of course, my philosophies, theories, protocols, initiatives require action. It requires doers as well as thinkers. Because now I was passing earlier and I saw some public workers. They were doing some sewage work. I'm assuming because they were going into sewage. So I was doing a big meditation as I went to the laundry. How we are because of our sanitation, right? To have cleaning water, to take a shower, to bathe, to do the dishes. All this civilization is really a privilege. The privilege of civilization. The privilege of civilization. So that's why we need to mass public-private partnership finance across the empire, buildings, for housing security, and but with some understanding that it has to be kept and upkept, and then if there's damage, we have to put some people to counterbalance by doing some work, whatever that is. You know, just like I got to take responsibility myself for damaging the washer, at least 2/3. That's 66%, because I believe it's pretty much on the 66%, 2/3 my fault that I damaged the washer. So I wish I could buy my anonymous friend one, but if anybody wants to box me, I'm gonna get that million. I'm gonna get that million and get, of course, the boxing matches, and that's what we're gonna do, of course, circumstantially and in the financial aspects where we are now. To be meditating on the corporations that the main has been is, of course, the fact that there's a growing financial stress in the past years, increasing economic, financial, commercial pressure. That's why my DRT is a major. Also, think of my DRT theory for the creation of the common currency of Canada, United States, and the census, because we're going to have to do a census of the population to see who we can accord some amnesty, because it is also in our interest to rehabilitate the criminal population, the incarcerated population. To do the Imperial Criminal Rehabilitation Act, especially to build those 44 tunnels. We have to mass build 44 underground urban city tunnel cities, in case of a thermonuclear war, which there's a possibility. In my scenario of 2019, my World War III scenario was not, of course, of a nuclear war. The nuclear question was 50-50. However, it was a 2/3 use of biological weaponry in my scenario. Now, COVID, I don't know. I know I had it. I was really sick. I thought I was going to die of COVID as well. So, COVID, I have my trinity of beliefs on COVID. First and foremost, I believe coronavirus, COVID 19, was transmitted from snakes to human beings. Now, I don't know for sure. Thus, I cannot rule out another possibility. Third dimension to that trinity is what I do know for sure is that just before a few months in October 2019, before COVID became widespread, I had in this room of Sun Temple predicted an international conflagration, aka World War III, and I have proof. I do have the proof because I have the sequence of videos, and parallel, I also created a workout training program system to go with such a scenario, which I'm proud of having created. Our workout is officially titled the General War Integrated Total Body Training System. I myself performed more than 372 sessions right here in the Srimavsan Temple and some outside. And it is a simple, easy workout training program system which requires no equipment. And of course, that is the implementation of my workout training program system, which I have to do, of course, in the consequential, the prudence, where we got the aspects, of course, of being rehabilitated in the domain that we have to massively finance citizens to work out, train, exercise. That's what I'm calling my citizen brother Bill Gates, Scorpio, Microsoft, and YouTube, and all institutions and organizations that are both public and private. So that will require us a parallel public-private partnership to mass finance fitness. It's again a of geopolitical interest and well-being and wellness as well. Well-being and wellness in parallel to having some joy by being and meditating and eating and feasting and tourism and fitness, and well, yeah, sexual health. I'm not sexually frustrated. If I would be, I would discuss it openly. But I would actually love to have, whether you're black or white, 18 and plus. You got to be 18 and plus to have friends with benefits. That would be nice. Friends with benefits, rock and roll, just discuss and what we can do for each other. If you're 18 plus, don't waste my time. I won't waste yours. What for? And that's how we're gonna do. And scratch each other's backs. You're a woman. You're a man. You're black. You're white. I've been in the open for as long as I can remember now. Since at least before March 2014, before February 2014, before early 2014, like winter 2014. So years and years and years. I even rock and roll and rap a little bit for the HOMO. I do that homo like Julius Caesar. Uh-uh. A lover like the legions. Yeah, I wrote this song. I have on paper since at least 20, a long time. 20. I have a copy from 2013. I wrote several versions of it. It has to do with Julius Caesar, being that he was bisexual, right, and he engaged in homosexual activities, and, and myself, was pansexual, was basically bisexual both ways, and that's when I wrote a song, rock and roll rap rock and roll song, and it was a homo and Julius Caesar and legions and Rome. And I do that homo like I'm Rome. Do that homo black and white and rainbow like I'm Julius Caesar, Rome, yeah, Roman. It's called Rainbow Roman, but it has several, I have several rock and roll and rap versions of it. But it's in our geopolitical interest for my fellow LGBT community, of which I'm part of, to of course, it's in our geopolitical interest for our LGBTQ community to be as loved, as equal, and as integrated in the North American collective in all aspects of society, such as it is for Aspies as well. So that is, of course, a great manifestation of the geopolitical realities of which we are part of today. That we are very close to a World War III, if some say even World War III has started. Now, my theory, which I cannot discuss over much, I can only discuss it with David McGinty, Pete Hegseth, and Tulsi Gabbard, and high-ranking members of the security apparatus of Canada and the United States, because my theory is binational, even transnational for the NATO complex, North Atlantic Treaty Organization member country, of which the DMAA philosophy, direct military assistance and action, or the direct military action and assistance, which in the parentheses it has the fifth letter for the acronym consequence, and of course, which I've discussed in the past, which is quick to mention that, of course, it's not just a theory and a protocol and a philosophy, but it's a work tool for future action or inaction vis-a-vis NATO. And of course, now, now we have the relationships where we have now, where we are at this point junction in time, where we have the critical systems operating in a manner where they're the end of the unipolar world as we have seen it in the past decades, right? The US dominated world has basically come to an end, and China came out as a superpower a few months ago with their military parade. And interestingly enough, I have to watch it again, but I watched several times, several minutes of it. It's interesting that I didn't see any any black person or person of color in the uh, People's Liberation Army. They call it People's Liberation Army, is the Army of the People's Republic of China, mainland China. And I was looking, and in my army, Dragon Army, I want to see black, white, and rainbow dragons and dragonesses, as my brothers and sisters, 13.4% of the population, including my neighbors, are blacks, our brothers and sisters are black, and we still have some work to be done in terms of racism and all those other issues which are pertinent to the North American collective as the emerging imperial republic, which we're going to be by the fusing of the 10, the 50, and the 3. But nonetheless, we have to consequently also be. After you let me know if you made it this far into the video. I'm gonna have to check it again, but I see tens of thousands of men and women in uniform of the PLA, and I was looking if I could. I didn't see even one black person. If you see the Army of Canada, United States, certainly there's generals, who are black, and of course there's in the Canadian Armed Forces and the United States Armed Forces, the Marines. There's blacks and whites, but in the PLA, I didn't even see one. I was looking. I said, I was actually looking to see if I could see at least one black person, in my army, the Dragon Army. PPP, we're going to have black, white, and rainbows. We're going to fuse Canada and United States. But you're going to have to be eligible to serve in the Dragon Army, you're going to have to be having lived here uninterruptedly. In Canada, we're going to have some standards, and I'm working on the 40-day Dragon Layers protocol. You're going to have to pass the 40-day rite. 40 days to be able to be a member of the Dragon Army, but of course nobody's born a dragon, not even myself, formulated according to different principles and organizations for total SSD, security, service, and defense, and to be able to discourse in standard English. And here in Quebec we got that French thing, but nonetheless my total mobile defense theory, the TMDT, which when we parenthesize it in a S becomes a system. So I cannot discuss that theory over much because I started formulating it after 2017 when I got out the depression, and of course after I crossed Canada, United States. That's when, of course, when I myself had developed it, and of course the TMDT, total mobile defense theory, TMDT, total mobile defense theory, T for total, M mobile, D defense, T theory, total mobile defense theory. When we put it in the parentheses, it has an S, so that S, of course, is the confluential, of course, of where we are now to be able to, of course, building it in the total mobile defense theory. That is the conjugation, of course, of the implementation, actually the putting into activity. Basically, my theory has to be put into practice, in other words. So the total mobile defense theory, part of the Dragon Army, is we're going to fuse the RCMP and FBI and get rid of the border, create a common passport. And to be eligible again to be a member of the Dragon Army, you have to have lived in the United States or Canada or across any NATO member country for at least 3.5 years. Maybe even 7. Not necessarily to be born in a NATO member country, of which there are 32. Sweden is the last one to have joined. Super important to discuss the direct military assistance and action. The direct military assistance and action is consequently what we have, of course, now to be relegated, of course, of those internal affairs of the DMAA for NATO internal affairs, and whether we externalize the action or assistance in the future to different conflicts, because potentially there's a consequence such as XYZ examples, but one concrete example of a consequence would be, of course, that transnational syndicate, criminal syndicate organized groups are, of course, supported by Russia. In consequence of the support by Russia, by several allies, of course, of Russia, in concordances, they have solidified their binational strategic, military, political, commercial, financial affairs. In China, I'm referring to the strengthening of the Sino-Russia, basically between China and Russia, the strengthening of their bilateral relations in the past 2.5 years to a point of unification of their military foreign affairs doctrines in the concordance to their common interests. So that, I don't want to get too academic, technical, philosophical, but basically they're strengthening their alliance. So we have to remind ourselves of the North American collective constantly that we are an emergent civilizational complex and from people who came all over the world. Canada, United States. That's why it's our best interest to fuse in the Imperial Republic complex, to fuse as one people and as one emergent imperial civilization of the future 21st century, with the inclusion of the mass rebuilding of the infrastructure, mass rebuilding of the roads, especially via mass public-private partnership, which in concordance has to be, of course, uninterrupted in all the manners where we are, to solidify the SSD complex security, service, and defense. Services with whatever can offer, can be offering, can be doing from washing dishes to massaging to cooking to transportation to cleaning to rehabilitation to all the transportation to tourism, and all integrated CIT citizen integration theory, which we have to formulate as the coming of our Imperial Republic. 23rd of December. I was a bit moody. I'm feeling better now that I ate. I guess I gotta be grateful because that was some great food, So it enabled me to work out a bit. It's gonna take another hour and a half to finish drying. Get some lows. Um, and do it on that rock and roll, always hitting the road now. Truckers, firefighters, please do the Imperial Integrated Citizen Security Protocol, what I call the Imperial Integrated Public Security Protocol. When you hear the sirens of the police, of the ambulance, of the firefighters, do 180 to your left, 180 to your right. That is a full circle. What I call in public civic duties and responsibilities in the public when you go outside, the full circle public citizen integrated security protocol, the full circle public citizen integrated protocol, the full circle public citizen integrated protocol, basically a full circle public security integrated protocol, where you have to have now, of course, to look to the left and to the right, and intermittent, of course, to make sure that others are safe when the sirens are rock and rolling, because you're in the public, so God knows, extra responsibilities. We got work to do ahead of 2026, lots of work. Work 24/7 for the firefighters, the butchers, the bakers. Let's build a fort on the Canadian-U.S. border to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome, where one of my favorite Super Bowls were fought, played, battled out. The Harbor Bowl, aka Blackout Bowl, Super Bowl 47 has several nicknames. My 49ers lost, but it's still one of my top 5 Super Bowls. Super Bowl 47 was the once and only once it happened. It never happened. And what are the odds that two brothers, same surname, Harbaugh, were facing each other as respectively the head coach of the Ravens and the head coach of the 49ers, Jim and John Harbaugh, right? They're two brothers in the NFL, even now they're back. One of them is back in the NFL, coaching after having coached Michigan, I believe. Dancing is my favorite sport, though, but my 49ers' great victory in Monday Night Football was 25 years of age, youth versus, and of course, Mr. Irrelevant Purdy was drafted last day. Mr. Mr. Irrelevant, 242nd. Give some chatty Purdy, go Incognito, San Francisco, the Bay Area, put on a hoodie, get dirty, and get $10,000. Give $10,000. That's what I have as debt. To give $100 bills, $100 to 10,000 divided by 100 is basically 100, right? To 100 different people, $100 for the holidays. Do it today. Do it tonight. Do it tomorrow. But tomorrow's the 24th already. If not, do it on the 26th. Also, athletes and artists or millionaires and the owners of the NFL, NHL, MLB, which I'm calling for the mass public private partnership, the Dragon Army, to mass finance, and please give, reduce the tickets of the cost of the tickets by 44.9%, and please give some charity. And also, the implementation of the charitable work, which I'm asking the actors, I'm not going to name names, rappers, millionaires, rappers, and rock stars and athletes, after Christmas, before the New Year's, finish the New Year by giving some charity. Go incognito. And if somebody recognizes you, say, no, I'm not Celine Dion. I'm not Meg the Stallion, and, Meg the Stallion, we can rock and roll a little bit, Give some charity, go incognito, and Matthew McConaughey and all the actors. Dwayne Johnson, that's my number one. Dwayne Johnson, I'm waiting for you to come out of the closet. We can do some of that rainbow loving, Number one on the list. But give some charity, Some charity. I made a mess. I'm gonna have to sweep. So I'm gonna finish with some rock and roll. For the butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, and the firefighters, gotta lift their hands up. It ain't all about Wall Street. Sometimes everybody gotta eat. Gotta give some second chances. Ain't nobody perfect glances. Got a kiss and got a rainbow. Got a left and right, and then you go for the left and for the right. For the other side. They be left and in the middle. They be left and in the dribble. They be left and on the side. So I rock and roll it till I day right. Daylight, satellites. We gonna spit it so your lights. That the microchip, that Aspie coding. That's the problem that you see. I know that rock and roll, parallel life, the year of darkness, it is 2030. I connect with myself, give me some tech. Physics got a transportation time machine upset. And I got a better, but I don't gamble, got a better. On the loving of the goddess, God bless and goddess kisses. For the empire go retarded, what about it? With some kisses, gotta hurt in the huddle, gotta miss it. Gotta fumble that recover, gotta get it for the struggle, gotta get it for the loving. For the butchers and the bakers and the nurses and the truckers on the road, gotta be careful for the snow. And I gotta say, I gotta be that gratitude every day. That's rock and roll, man. And I'm playing around when it comes to rock and roll. I'm not playing around when it comes to rock and roll. I'm not playing around when it comes another round. Go over time. Every time for the rock and roll, they got a sight. And we got a sun and the moon up in the glance. Gotta drink that eggnog like I'm barfing like a frog. Leap, leap, leap forward. For the empire that you see, ain't no bees with me. So we got a tripping sight inside a lighter. Get some tongue up in the sky, so I rise and die. For the sunshine never lies, so up in the sight. I done been that suicide, and up in the lights, Gotta give me some massage. Somebody gotta need some friends with benefits, man. Open to groupies, but you're gonna have to finance my studio time groupies, because I can wash some feet with that like Jesus, rock and roll, washing feet. Like, yeah. Play black and white on rainbow, just so that you gotta know. Saw the show in Fort Flora, dancing on the boogie score. Yeah, rock and roll. Love you, pledge your allegiance, legions. Love is good, love is important. For the empire, let it rise and let it be. On the left, go Hararatsi.